Disclaimer. Life is easier when you start to expect the Spanish Inquisition. Now, as anyone who has paid attention to this channel for longer than 5 seconds will be able to tell you, I am a massive dork. Now, with that dorkiness is a massive love for anime. I've watched a lot of anime, I've critiqued a lot of anime, mostly with my mates, not online. But yeah, I love me some anime. And loving anime comes with participating in anime fandoms. And participating in some anime fandoms leads to stupid shit like the whole subs versus dubs argument. And for those of you looking at me like, okay, you long-haired goofus, explain to me what the hell this sub versus dub bullshit is. Basically, you have two camps often within the fandom of an anime. Those who prefer subtitled only anime in the original language, and those who prefer anime to be localized and dubbed into whatever the fuck the local language of the speaker is. And you see, anime dubbing has been around for a long, long time. The first couple of anime dubbed into English were Speed Racer and Astro Boy. And since this was the 1960s, you had small casts, small budgets, and a whole lot of cutting and trimming involved to make things supposedly culturally appropriate for American children. And they were by no means good dubs. They are fucking terrible. Like, these two shows are cult classics just because of the sheer cheese factor, not in spite of it. And then as time went on, you know, this sort of shit continued in the 70s with things like Gatchaman being turned into Battle of the Planets. And then you had the 80s come, and then you had Robotech, which was made out of Macross, Southern Cross, and Moss Speed, among others. And then you had the big anime boom in the 90s, which led to the floodgates basically opening, which brings us to where we are today. And as I said, you used to have this whole practice with dubbing, where because of the cultural differences and what was considered to be appropriate for children were very different to the Japanese and the US and Western audiences. So a lot of these anime, you would have names changed wholesale, you would have entire episodes cut out, you would have any scenes that were considered to be too violent, too graphic, too whatever for kids removed. And often you would have voice actors employed which really kind of sucked. And this was true fucking right up until the early 2000s at least. Like, with anime dubbing these days, you often have anime that are truer to the original Japanese version. Most anime are sold or broadcast uncut. They have their scripts more often than not translated wholesale, rather than American writers making up shit point by point. You cannot get away with a lot of the heavy-handed censorship that used to be considered okay within localizing anime. Let's take, for example, Dragon Ball Z. It's been fucking dubbed so many goddamn times just for an English audience alone. Me, when I was a kid, I grew up with the Ocean Group dub. And the Ocean Group dub wasn't good, man. Like, a lot of people remember it because it's what got them into Dragon Ball Z, but the dub is pretty fucking terrible. Most of your dub cast worked on Beast Wars if you want an example of how miscast a lot of them were. Beast Wars contains some fantastic voice acting, and even these dudes couldn't salvage what Ocean Group and Saban managed to hack together out of Dragon Ball Z. That's what the big draw to a lot of the DVD sales were with Dragon Ball Z. You had your first season and your second season sold completely uncut. So you got to see what the hell was heavily removed and heavily exercised and heavily altered for American audiences. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent here. My point is, a lot of people criticize dubs these days online. These so-called anime purists who refuse to listen to anything that isn't subtitled and have this mentality that you shouldn't either. And that pisses me off. Because the fact of the matter is, both have merit. Both subs and dubs, depending on your point of view. See, they've both got their merits, which is why I find this whole argument fucking redundant in the first place. But most of the time, the ones bringing it up are your anime purists, weeaboos, who refuse to listen to anything that's broadcast in English and think it's inferior, even though 99% of the smelly unwashed bastards are native English speakers. And the reason I say this is because, yeah, I fucking firmly believe that there is a market for dubs. When I grew up, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, we didn't have the best quality dubs, but the shows were good. I think the translators a lot of the time captured the original spirit of fucking most of the shows and shit. Do you really think Dragon Ball would have the audience it's got in America if it wasn't for shit like the Ocean Group dub? I don't think so. And over time, Funimation has gone back and revisited everything they've done with the Dragon Ball franchise over and over again in order to give audiences something truer to the original vision of the anime. Let's put it this way. As far as the Dragon Ball franchise goes, I prefer watching the original Dragon Ball subbed. The English dub is very good. Bryce Armstrong in particular as the narrator is excellent, but I prefer the sub. I have friends who don't like some of the Japanese voices, so they won't watch it unless it's dubbed. And that's a fucking valid argument in their case. They don't like the voices. Fair enough. But a lot of people I know prefer the dubs because they don't want to read their anime. Fair enough, again. But as I say, Dragon Ball I prefer to watch subbed. Dragon Ball Z I prefer to watch subbed. Dragon Ball Kai I prefer to watch dubbed because they've gone back and they've done really fucking good with the voice acting. Stuff like the movies I prefer to watch dubbed because I don't know, I just prefer to watch them dubbed. But you've got different anime where I prefer them fucking dubbed to subbed. You've got certain anime I prefer subbed to dubbed. I don't prefer either outright because I feel they're both extremely valid forms of entertainment. People have their reasons for dubbing anime and localizing anime. Sure, it's mostly money, but you get people into anime by localizing it because it's not just Japanese cultural purists watching anime. If you were to stop dubbing shit, all you would have are the purists. And then you would very much find a lot of your profits drop off because the purists are the minority. Your everyday Joe Blogs doesn't give a flying fuck about what Miyoko the fucking cat girl is meant to sound like in Japanese. They just care that the anime she's in appeals to them and that the story is told in a way that is suitable to them. And that's where I'm going back to Voltron or Dragon Ball Z or some shit. The dubs might have been kind of arse, but they're still a worldwide phenomenon. Let's take Voltron for example. The original Beast King Go line. Very graphic, very violent. The English dub is very poorly hacked together and sloppy. None of the kids watching at the time gave a fuck. And that's why Voltron is a fucking worldwide phenomenon that is still generating money today, and why Beast King Go line is pretty much forgotten about. Because combining mecha shows were a dime a dozen, and because a lot of young boys fucking love this whole combining mecha thing. That's the thing, dudes love giant robots, but that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is that the subs versus dubs argument is stupid because they're both equally valid. And going around complaining about dubs just makes you look like a fucking weeaboo. It doesn't make you look like an elite example of humanity. You know what I'm saying? I'm Damian Skyfire. Till next time.